Todd out here to point you out for your questions too. We're going to try to get a little bit more organized. So again, we have people stepping on each other at the same time. So let me.
Everybody loves a shout out, Tad. Everybody.
We'll point you out. All right. It's on you now.
All right, man. It's it's very cool to see everybody. I absolutely love this time of year. There's a connectedness that goes on. We're together, the straining, the learning, new people to it. There was somebody who'd asked me earlier, what do you think about an encore? I said, encores happens after the show. It's a new tour, new show, new group, and we ride together. So there's some familiar faces, but obviously we added a lot too. So it's not rinse and repeat where we're starting right back. The standard should be different, but there's also, it is new and there's a freshness that comes with that, with a new season and ready to rock together. So glad to open it up and get the whole day going.
And David Moore, Dallas Morning News. We talked to you a lot last year about the changes you made in your defensive scheme. Do you see that as kind of reinventing who you were, or was it just a logical evolution and progression with where the game is going?
Yeah, I think it's, David, probably the second, because I thought some changes from a scheme standpoint that needed to be changed and addressed. And maybe the one way I would describe it is some things are good, but it's not, a scheme that would last forever or in every space. So that's really where it adjusted more to how the game is adjusting. And so think of it as a natural progression of things you have to do, and there'll be new concepts that come up this year that we'll have to adjust to as well. And so the more space, the more wide open it feels like the game is going, flooding a zone, putting a lot of people to one side. You better be rock solid with some of your principles, how you can change some looks for an offense. So I think it's, I know it's a function of the scheme and just needed to adapt.
Todd Archer from ESPN. Do you have this offseason, do you almost kind of try to anticipate what other teams are going to do against you after seeing you for a full season?
Absolutely, Todd. And the reason being is not just for us, I would say, but what are some of the trends that happened around the league? And as we all know, there can be some, the better a team plays, the more they're studied. So usually teams that are, participating in the Super Bowl, as you go into an off season, they're almost at the top of the list. Okay, let's see what they did on defense or on special teams or on offense. And it kind of trickles down, which makes sense. The team who had good success, was there some part of their package that they're doing where we may look at it on the other side to say, what are some trends that could be happening if you're watching that team? We may not even play that team, but it's worthwhile to say they're being studied. There could be a new concept that we need to go through. And so that, it kind of goes twofold. One, is there anything you'd like to add to your package? But two, we didn't see this, how would we play it? So it is a big part of it and how you want to study and adapt. And who's doing well, that's kind of where you start.
Clarence Hill, Fort Worth Star-Telegram. Jerry Jones the other day intimated that he took care of you financially to get you to come back. Just talk about the value that they feel that you have to this organization and what that means.
Clarence, I think the first rule of Fight Club is you never talk about Fight Club. I would say, unless my Jersey roots have changed, we don't talk about contracts. But honestly, I'm having a blast here. I really am. And I'm enjoying the whole process, of what we're doing. And I just want to provide value, to Mike first and to the defense. And so every once in a while you find where your feet are and you're in a good space and you feel it. And that's really how I felt here. And but I'm going to refer to Fight Club. Go ahead, and I'll follow up.
Just the relationship with Mike, how has that changed? And, with all this junk in the offseason, can you just talk about that?
Yeah, I definitely can. I think I'm glad, actually, Clarence, that you brought it up because, I've been in his seat and you control what you can control. Even that can be hard, let alone the things you can't control. And so I know in that seat I had somebody that would help look around corners for me in Atlanta. That was a guy named Raheem Morris who, hey, Dan, think about this. And that is one of the nice parts for me, that I get to look around some of those corners for Mike to point out some things. Hey, this might be coming down the road. Let's look at this. And so I just wanted, in no uncertain terms, make sure I'm looking around the corners. I ain't coming around the corner. And so I love my relationship with Mike. I enjoy working with him. And I respectfully know that outside the building, that's been a discussion, but it's never one inside. So respectfully, this will, kind of be our last question on that topic. I'm absolutely having a blast with him. It's part of the reason that I came to Dallas in the first place. But that's what I wanted to follow. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, Dan, Tim Kalishaw, Dallas Morning News. On takeaways, your last couple teams in Atlanta when you were head coach were pretty average in takeaways. You've come here, they've been great, including first last year. Have you rediscovered something? How do you view the whole secret to being near the top of takeaways?
Well, good ball skills help. I can tell you that from the interception standpoint. One of the things, and I know you guys see it going out to practice, but I was coming here and I've shared it with a lot of coaches to say, the time and energy that Mike spends on ball skills, pre-practice, post, if you're going to get good at it, you better have a bunch of different ways to go catch it, high, low, catching the flash of the ball, the tips. So I would say the emphasis has always been there for me, film work, going through it, but the application on the practice field, I think, has been stronger here. So one of the goals I'd have for our team this year is can we force and recover more fumbles? And so that's been one of the points of emphasis as we're heading into this camp. It was that through the off season. So if we can add that part, to the interception side of things, I think we'll be right back there where we want to, in terms of an attitude for the ball.
Calvin Watkins, Dallas Morning News. Talk about how opponents will adjust to you. How would you get Micah in the same fashion? How will they attack him?
Right, that's a good question because he does spend time in different rooms and different spots to go from D-line, linebacker some. I'm sure you probably heard he's working with the running backs with Skip Pete some. Wide receivers, kicking. So anyway, it is, when you come into something and you're first new, they don't really know who you are. It happens a lot at wide receiver, doesn't it? Where, okay, after a while, this guy needs a double team. So one of the, kind of give you the good, bad, when you have an excellent player and you line them up in one position, they can still make a huge impact. You see that with defensive ends all throughout time. Do they chip them? Do they find a way to go? What's unique about Mike, I believe, is the way we can align him in different spots where he's counted as a down guy and as an off the guy. And so I think that's important to say, where's the alignment and how we would deploy him from there, because certainly they value, his rush ability and his speed, but we want to make sure we're not just putting him into one spot. And that's kind of part of the uniqueness of him, and we'll try to feature that as often as we can.
John Fassel, The Athletic. With Mike, how do you coach someone that has had so much success right away? Do you have to be anything different? Do you have to coach him differently than you did last year as a rookie?
No, I think we have a very authentic relationship. When he first got here, I asked, you going to give me permission to coach you hard? And when that happened in our, like most relationships over time and trust, you have the best intentions. You're able to really speak honestly and from the truth of, hey, this part of your game I think you're really nailing. This part I think we need more time and attention to. So I would say our relationship has grown stronger, now that we're going into a second year and a season together. But although all the physical talent is there, I would say his number one redeeming quality is his competitiveness. He is a rare competitor. So if it's a race across the tennis court to get to the weight room, he'd want to win the race. So that part of his competitiveness does carry over into it. So he's not somebody that naturally would say, look at me, how great I am. He is driven as a competitor. And so I think that's his superpower. I know he's got physical gifts that are hard to match from a speed standpoint, but it's the drive, I think, that allows those gifts to take place. So I'm not concerned from a humility standpoint. I always want to push him, and he does like to get pushed. I don't know if he likes to get pushed, but we push him.
Dan Torrey, Epstein, USA Today. You mentioned finding each player's superpowers and finding what's unique. That said, when you think about what linebackers work well in your system and what you're looking for, what do you want from linebackers in today's scheme?
Yep. I think, and you're probably going back to how we do the first part of the evaluation, I think the traits of speed and length, from a physical stature, that's a big part of it, because we do play a good bit of man or like man defenses. So could this player guard a tight end, who's got, 6'4", 6'5", and speed to get long? And, think of the guy who has to, guard our backs out of the backfield. Sometimes that may be a different player based on a running back who's, 5'10" and 200 who can really change direction compared to the 6'5" tight end. It may not be the same player. So you want to find people with that length who could do that and the speed to guard guys. And then at linebacker, tackling. That's the name of the game. Can you play square and strong and tackle? And usually it's not a I don't have to look at the production. You can put the tape on and say, he knows the ball's going to here, and that's an instinctual part of it. And at the combine, you see the speed and the length, but you can't measure the instincts. And that only really comes from watching the game and seeing how productive a guy can go make plays. So physically, speed and length, and then production and the tackling, because he's generally going to where he thinks the ball is. So probably those two things in short order.
Christy Scales, Cowboys Radio. What are you seeing early from Marquise Bell? And while it may not be fair to compare a rookie to a veteran, does he have some similar physical traits to J. Ron Curse? And you were talking earlier about matching up against tight ends.
Yep. It's a great question. He's off to an excellent start. And then you guys have been around too. You feel somebody's hunger for it. You just do. And all these guys are driven and going, but there's also, just like there's levels of talent, there's levels that you feel someone going for it in the very biggest way. And I feel that with Marquise. We've given him more jobs to, see what can go. And it'll generally take us a month or two to put him into some spots to say, okay, that felt good. But quite honestly, out here, there's also some space to make some mistakes and find out what a player really can do. And I feel with Marquise or a guy like Sam, I'm gonna go in the lab a little bit to find out what they can do and try to feature them in those ways. And when I get there, in fact, I had that conversation with Mike. I said, come back to me in 3 weeks. I just need to go in the lab and put them into some spaces and spots and evaluate them and see where it goes. Because I recognize it's not all going to just, keep stacking good. But there are little spots that you see this from this player. It's speed, it's length. I think he's going to be an excellent hitter. We won't really know that until we get into the preseason game. But what I've seen so far is somebody that can handle multiple roles, and I do feel like he has the speed and length to play two spots in our defense, both on the back end at safety and down closer to the line of scrimmage as a linebacker. When he was coming out of Florida A&M, I was really pushing to get him drafted as a linebacker. And then when we selected a linebacker, I said, this guy would make a hell of a safety. So you got to get the players in. So as we looked at him, I'm sorry to interrupt, but as we looked at him, I don't know yet, but he's in between those two positions, and we'll kind of navigate it over the next month.
Just as a follow-up, I think that a lot of us are looking at these joint practices coming up as really beneficial to the veterans who aren't going to get the looks in the preseason games. And obviously you can't control matchups in preseason games as much. So, but for Bell, I mean, it is coming against the Broncos and Chargers. You can get him exactly how you want. Is that
yes, and that also, coaching staff to coaching staff. Hey, can we give a man-to-man shot? You bet. I'd like to see, some matchups on some plays. And so really this time for a lot of these guys, this is such a crucial time, and why it's so much fun at training camp, because you feel where they're going for it, and it's hard not to look at the big picture and down the road to Denver. And I just tried to say, hey, we're having a walkthrough today, and then we're going to throw a kick-ass day tomorrow. So I try to make the big picture and then bring it down in, because the only thing he can do tomorrow is just throw a great day and keep stacking. So we'll get to there for him. But you're right, I do like the opportunity to evaluate against other players. And fortunately for us, we do that on a regular basis here, but having the chance to do it against two other clubs more, and I think that'll be very beneficial.
Joe Trahan from WFAA TV, and I do want to go down that road a little bit more with the joint practices. More than the evaluation of one player, when you look at the whole group, how do you maximize the time that you'll have to get the whole group done?
Yeah, that's a good question. Joe stumped me. I do almost an after action almost in every time we go, to say, this went good, this I think we can do differently, this I think we can do better. And sometimes just that dialogue alone, what if we change the leverage on this player? So once we get through the initial times of going against our offense, both are throwing new offense and new defense every day. But then you start to see some, okay, I know what this means. So going against a whole nother group where you better just trust your keys and you can't play a play, you haven't ever seen that formation or play, that to me will tell you how instinctive someone is, and you better trust your rules. So that's what I'd like to see from those days. No scouting report, not one look at what they would do. We won't put one piece of tape on before that practice. Let's go play ball.
Bill Jones, CBS 11. What are you seeing out of Sam Williams?
A lot from what I saw in college. I see speed and I see power, and so far we're right side, left side, inside, trying to find the right spot. We've mixed him in a number of different spots. at this point, he's answered those challenges, and I feel his speed. I feel, his get off. Those are things that I kind of thought was there. Now, over these next 3 weeks, what's the package? How will we utilize him? But it'll somewhere start in the pass rush, vicinity first, and then break out from there, because that's, to me, the part that we want to add to his game the fastest. And then we can add more of the first and second down role as it goes. But I've been encouraged by what I've seen so far. He's around some good group of veterans who are bringing the energy, knowing how to go, and it's been fun to see their development. It really has. So he's one of, I talked about Bell, talked about some others that I've been excited on their development so far. But come back in 3 weeks and I'll have a better vision. I won't give away our scouting report, but I'll have a better understanding where it's at. All right, you guys have a good one.
He's ready. All right, good morning, guys.
Losing James Washington this early in the juncture, how do you, I know you're looking to get certain guys snaps and opportunities. How has that changed how you kind of script out what you want to see in practice here? And do you try to divide those up evenly? Is it whoever rises gets more, or how do you go about it?
It's a great question. Obviously, unfortunate things like this happen during training camp. You have injuries like this. I think certainly every guy is going to probably get a little bit more opportunities, and as it goes, certain guys get more and more opportunities as this thing continues to progress. And so I think that's usually the flow to training camp. We got a lot of guys that we liked when they came into this place, and I think they got great opportunities to take advantage of this situation right now.
John Fassel, The Athletic. What have you seen from Jalen Tolbert? I mean, we noticed that he's been moving around a lot, but what has stood out to you about him early on?
I think his work ethic, how smart he is, how he can handle, an NFL offense and just be able to play in a versatile role. We're asking a lot out of him as far as line up in different places to allow us to be versatile with our other guys out there. And so I think that's huge, and especially as you progress into a season, to have those type of guys that can play a lot of spots, that'll give him more and more opportunities.
Calvin Watkins, Dallas Morning News. Can you speed up the learning curve for some of these guys, because you're going to have to rely on them a little bit sooner than what you want?
There's certainly guys that are hopping in there with the ones that, rookies that, hey, get ready to roll. And so, whether it's Jalen, the tight ends with those guys, Jake and those guys, there's a number of guys. And so we're going to get them in there, get them ready to go, and see what they got.
Louis Scruggs, NBC5. Your thoughts on Turpin, what you've seen, how would you like to use him offensively?
Was really excited when we got a chance to watch him play in the USFL. I thought he played an awesome role there. He made some big-time plays, and so when we were able to watch that stuff from Will, I thought it was really fun to see, and you can definitely see a role that he can play in the NFL. He'll be a versatile guy. He's one of those guys who's obviously got some special returning traits as far as a returner, but we'll be able to find him a role on the offensive side just to use him in space, give him the ball, obviously. Things that he did really, really well in the USFL and certainly at TCU as well.
Skyler Dixon with the AP. There's been a lot of talk about CD rising to that #1 receiver role. Statistically, you haven't really had that in your time as the play caller. I just kind of wondered your philosophy on a dominant #1 guy statistically, and whether that's a requirement to kind of be as good as you want to be.
I think there's a lot of different ways to play it. Certainly see, I don't think it's a shock that he's probably going to get a lot of targets as we go here. And so I think he's a really, really just coming into his own right now. This is his third year, really taking ownership of it, playing all over the field, and I think he's going to have a great opportunity here. There's times where you have depth in certain positions, and you're able to play guys a little bit more stationary maybe and have multiple guys who can be #1s. And as we go, other guys are going to rise to occasions to take those opportunities as well, but CD's ready.
Christy Scales, Dallas Cowboys radio. What have you seen early from Dennis Houston? And at Western Illinois, did they move him around a lot, or is his versatility something that is stepping out for you?
No, certainly Dennis at Western Illinois, he certainly played a lot of different positions there. He was able to move around the field, but he's come in and just really impressed us with just his work ethic. He's really, really detailed and really, really specific, and I think it's awesome when he takes those things you teach in the meetings and he applies them immediately. I think that's a huge comfort level for quarterbacks when you know a guy is going to take that lesson and apply it rather quickly. And so he's earned some more opportunities, certainly with James's absence. Some other guys are going to get opportunities. He had kind of been playing that role as the X receiver a little bit early in camp, and so it's a natural for him to get more opportunities.
Mike Ducey from Fox 4. What's the challenge in getting Zeke and Pollard both involved in ways that make them the most effective and your offense most effective?
We certainly want those guys to get touches, and I think it's a matter of finding those different roles. I think both of them we want to get creative with, get them on the field at the same time, and then obviously, when one guy's down, the other guy's in there contributing. And so I think it'll be a fun task for us just to kind of pair those guys up, be creative with how we can utilize those guys, put them in different positions, and find their opportunities for success.
Tim Belishaw, Pigskin Panel, the ticket. To follow up Mike's question, for those of us who thought Tony should have got more touches last year, what were we wrong about there? And B, for that to happen this year, is that something that just has to play out, or rather than be planned?
No, I think it's definitely fair. He's the guy that we want to get the ball to. He's had a ton of success with when he does get those opportunities, and so I think the running back role is one thing. Certainly when Zeke and him can kind of tag team that role, but then it's another opportunity for him to expand that role and play in some different positions out in space and some of the things that certainly he's capable of doing. I think the more we expand those roles, I think the more opportunities he'll be able to get out there and get touches.
Greg Simmons from KSAT San Antonio. Terrence Steele, talk about his involvement, if you will, and not just in blocking for pass protection, but also more along the lines of helping your running game progress.
Terrence is a really physical guy. I think that definitely jumps out to you. He comes off the ball. He's got to be one of the most quick, sudden guys off the ball. He's our example so many times on the offensive line of guys just coming off the ball and creating contact. And so, he certainly helps us on that right side with him and Zach. A lot of times they're in double teams. They can really get a great push on the backside or on the front side of runs. And so he's an important piece of this, and I think it's been awesome for him just to kind of have a home base this offseason, play that right tackle position, and really take ownership of it.
Michael Coleman, KLTV, East Texas. Can you all afford to be patient with the young receivers?
Yeah, I think certainly we liked them coming in. I think we're excited to have those guys, to give them opportunities. I think we're in a great spot right now to give those guys more and more chances as it progresses. I think those guys will take advantage of it. And obviously an NFL season's a long one. We'll see how it all plays out, and we'll be ready to roll.
Guard rotation with Tyler and Cover right now?
Yeah. Tyler and Connor are both getting in there at left guard. I think it's good for those guys to have a little bit of a home base. Just keep rotating in there. We'll get those guys a couple other reps, whether it's a tackle, whether it's guard, fullback, whatever those different roles are that are kind of their secondary roles. But we want them to really focus on that left guard spot, compete, play it out, and we'll be in a great situation once it all plays out.
Caleb Burton, NFL Network. Just curious, when you've seen CD from year one going into year two, what do you think sticks out to you most in terms of his leadership? Obviously, his numbers speak for itself, but both in this situation with Washington.
Yeah, I think from a leadership standpoint, he's kind of the old guy, and it's crazy. It's third year, but with Noah in there and a lot of younger guys, he really takes ownership of that group. I think he does a phenomenal job with it, and I think he's just got such a good command of the offense now. He can line up all over the field. He's doing a lot of different things, and him and Dak working together, it looks really, really special.
Todd Archer of the ESPN. With Tony Pollard, how do you work on his route tree and doing more than just what running backs do? Or is that something you wouldn't do?
No, it's certainly something we've been emphasizing with Tony. I think he did a healthy dose of it during OTAs. We had a few receivers kind of down, and so it worked out perfect. He was able to do a bunch of receiver stuff, and those are different roles that those guys will continue to emphasize and utilize. I think he has a very firm foundation as far as playing running back. We feel really good about that, so we were able to expand that through OTAs, and we'll get to as we go into the season, we'll kind of find where that balancing act is for him.
Time at Memphis where he lined up wide a lot.
Yeah, certainly at Memphis. I mean, really, that was his primary position, was slot receiver, and he'd go into the backfield. You know, that was kind of his secondary role. And so there's a ton of it on film. A lot of it's kind of coming back to him. I think he does have more than just that. You know, he's not going to run just the running back route tree, the quick game, and just kind of the completion plays. He can stretch people vertically, and I think that'll be a huge advantage for him, just to put people in conflict of how they want to handle him.
Clarence Hill, 4-Star Telegram. With Tony, is there a balancing act on, you want to get him more touches, but here's a guy who's never character load and had like 20 touches in back-to-back games before, because you still want to get to maximize his juice in his legs. You find yourself trying to maximize a balance, getting him the ball more, but also not wearing him down.
I think there's certainly a balance of how much you utilize him as far as just workload. You know, I think there is a balancing act of that. You know, you don't want him to play slot receiver and run, 50-yard routes all day and then ask him to go play running back, after 5-6 of those. And so I think there's definitely a balancing act of that. Again, we just want to utilize him the best way we can. I think that's part of the testing during training camp, is to test him out there in space, test him in the backfield, his workload, how many reps we throw him in a particular period, and just kind of keep playing with that, and we'll find where his role is best situated.
Kellen, having done this for several years now, and you do the cell scout in the offseason, you're always following other teams and plays. Coming into this year, do you have like a percentage you feel you want to change the offense or give different looks compared to just getting better at some of the things you do in order to throw other defenses off balance? I mean, just in general, what's your philosophy on how you break that up going into this year?
No, I think you go through the same process as far as you evaluate yourself first, things you did well, things you want to improve on, acknowledge that. Then you obviously go through a little bit of the roster transition. You know, obviously we had a few of those changes, so you got to see who you are as a team, and then obviously from that standpoint, hey, look around the league, see where the trends are going, and then from there, kind of build what this 2022 offense we want it to look like. And so, there will be some tweaks, like always. There'll be little adjustments, playing with the different personnel, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Kellen, Jory Epson with USA Today. Last year you talked a lot about pick your poison. We have all these receivers. Do you expect CD to be a featured receiver in a way that none of your guys were last year because of the options you have, and what would that look like?
I think naturally, obviously, he's a really, really talented receiver. I think naturally he's going to get a lot of targets. We got to utilize him, put him in different positions. I think that stuff will naturally play itself out. I don't think that's much of a hidden thing. But our other guys, I think, will have great opportunities to rise to the occasion. And as those opportunities rise for those guys, it'll allow them to play in some different positions as well. And so CD's ready. He's ready to take whatever he needs. And so we'll certainly utilize it that way.
Just to follow up on that, did you feel like your ball distribution was what you wanted it to be last year? Obviously, an initial target on a play might not be where the play ends up going, but when you look back at the season, what did you think?
There's always little things that you want to improve on, I think, certainly from a ball distribution. I don't think you ever want to throw it in the QB's head. I think by telling him to throw it to a certain guy, I think naturally the way you structure it, give certain guys targets, certain guys opportunities based off being the primary receiver or maybe a secondary receiver. And so that's something you learn, you grow with, and certainly this year I think we're in a really good place for that.
David Hellman, Fox Sports. Totally subjective on my part. Correct me if I'm wrong, but just specifically watching Dak, it seems like a lot of his completions in practice are 10 to 20 yards from the line of scrimmage, not anything super aggressive downfield. I'm just curious, do y'all put an emphasis on focusing on high percentage plays in practice and worry about the low percentage stuff later?
I think it's kind of install football. You kind of go through 10 days of this thing, and so certain days are going to emphasize different elements. And there's going to be completions right now. Probably the way we've installed it right now, a little bit more focused on getting these completions, getting the timing down of those things. Sometimes go balls, post routes are a little bit more of a one-on-one, timing component of it. But he's doing a great job. I think he's done a really nice job. Okay.
There's so much talk about Tony in his increased role. Talk about Zeke. Is he still a guy that can carry the load? Do you see the juice back in his legs?
Yeah, no question. I don't think the Tony thing has anything to do with the Zeke, component of it. I think we are really excited about Zeke. Give him what he needs and what we can take advantage of with Zeke, and then Tony's going to be an awesome awesome piece. You know, we lost a couple receivers that allows us to utilize Tony in that role a little bit more, and then, you know, in the backfield he'll be able to emphasize that spot when Zeke's not on the field. And so fired up. We got two really good ones.
Thank you. Thanks,
Coach. Okay.
Hello, everybody. All right, we're back.
Just open with the David Moore, Dallas Morning News. Can you just open talking about the kicking competition and when you had a day like you did yesterday where neither was that good, how do you respond and just from there?
Yeah, I think between Liram and Jonathan, a little more older guy, veteran guy, and a young rook, it's a kind of a cool balance to let those guys compete. Haven't really been a part of competition quite like this with the kind of experience and age difference. And then you kind of answered the question. You know, the day like yesterday, kind of knocking a little bit of rust and the dust off is let's see how they respond. And I think that's a huge part of being a kicker is missing a kick or two and three, having a bad day, and you let it, you know, affect you the next day. And I told the guys yesterday, I said, you know, kickers and cornerbacks got to have really short-term memories. So we addressed some, you know, just mechanical things, and they got to come out and let it ride the next couple opportunities for sure.
Todd Archer of the ESPN, what's the impact that CD's increased role as the number one receiver and Tony's increased role? How does that impact your return game? Where do you look?
It's a huge impact. I mean, those guys, the 2 years I've been here, have been outstanding. Part of it is you look at the 48 dress, they're already dressed for their offensive role, so you're not necessarily adding somebody that isn't on that role except for like returning. So CD punt returning and Tony kickoff returning has been a huge bonus, and they've been really damn good at it. And that role might be limited this year. And so you guys know we picked up, Turpin, and I have huge aspirations for him, as well as a couple of other guys we got to compete for that spot. But losing those guys will be a little bit of a change. It's also one of the reasons that on special teams we don't have a playbook, because a lot of times the return game especially is dictated by who the returner is. And for me to just put together a playbook return without knowing who the returner might be just might not fit. So the return will be determined by who the returner is, and we'll schematic that around who that might be. But yeah, I expect those guys to not carry probably the same full-time role returning kicks.
You always never had a playbook? Is that different than most?
About the last, I don't know everybody else, probably the last, 8-10 years maybe even less than that. I just got to a point where I spent a lot of time in the off season, putting together a playbook, and then you get to training camp within the season and the returner changes, and instead of a real small, fast bounce guy, you got a bigger, thick running back who's a vertical guy. And I said, well, I'll rip these pages up. So we kind of really just work on training camp and OTAs, just drills, skills, techniques, fundamentals, and that's our playbook. And we say this is going to apply to really no matter what we decide to do. And I think it's been good for us. It's let me watch more film in the off season instead of typing up and putting together a book that just isn't as valid, I think, for what I have to do.
John Tory, I'm with USA Today. When you talk about a short memory for the kickers, how do you, because you're a pretty positive person, how do you balance encouraging these kickers, but also if they have a day like they had yesterday, making sure they understand where they need to improve?
Yeah, that's a good balance question for me, because part of what I want to do with these guys is encourage Lirim and Jonathan. I mean, they're all, obviously Jonathan's a rookie and Lirim's really a young NFL guy, and they need encouragement, but they also know I told them that I'm going to be very critical of their kicking and their mechanics. I'm not going to demean them in any way, but I think, hey, we got to tighten some stuff up here. And it is a balance between, giving some good, honest feedback that might be a little bit strong, and like, hey, we're all right, let's go. It's a 59-yarder yesterday into the win on the last kick, and we expect you to make hard kicks. But I also get it. That was a hard kick. So there's a good balance, and I think they're real good guys, and they're very responsive. And I'd rather have them experience some tough days early and okay, than they come out just guns blazing, and then all of a sudden it's a tail off. And so I'm hopeful.
When you mentioned not having a playbook, do you in the offseason say, okay, here are guys who might return and here are what their strengths are? Is it more like that, so you at least know when the person gets in what you want to do?
Yeah. It's kind of hard to explain. It's a great question, and it's hard to explain. So there's common drills and techniques that I'll use that will just drill and drill and drill. And then based on what we end up scheming up for week 1 Tampa, those will apply to what we're going to do. And if you ask, well, what are you going to run in the preseason? Well, I'll tell you, because it doesn't matter. We'll have 1 punt return and 1 kick return, and it's going to be all man stuff because we just want to see one-on-one matchups. So what you're going to see in the preseason isn't what you're going to see in the regular season, but all those drills that we work on will apply to what we end up putting in the regular season. And then in the regular season, we have a weekly playbook, if you will. It's more of a scouting report that shows the guys this is what we're running, and they already know how to do it. So that's kind of the cool part. We know how to do it. Okay, this is what we're going to do.
Bill Jones, CBS 11, how excited are you to have Dante Turpin, and how long has he been on your radar?
Great question. First part of it, I'm very excited. Very excited. I was actually, when we worked him out back in Dallas, I was with my family in Idaho, and I texted Will. I said, Will, if you want me to come back for this workout, I'll come back. And he's like, no, we got it. We'll film it. We'll send it to you. And he's been on my radar since 2018. Clearly, at TCU, I've watched every single one of his returns. And then keeping an eye on him over the course of his fan league, football league, and spring league, and then USFL, I've seen all that work. So when we found out that he was on our radar, I was very hopeful. And obviously when we signed him, super excited. And he's got a long ways to go to compete, but I think this is a team that has, a potential role for him, and I hope he exploits it.
Helpful
I can neither confirm or deny. Probably.
Michael Gelkin, Dallas Morning News. Coming off the kicker inefficiency of late, is there something to be gained by shortening the range of some of the attempts, or is that not the type of precedent you want to set coming off of a bad series of performances?
Yeah, I think, I want these guys to make hard kicks. If you were there at the beginning of practice, we stayed in the 37 to 51 yard range. And then we had the competitive period, we backed them way up because it's mostly for competition purposes for also the offense and defense. So coming off a day like yesterday, I think, we got to keep it in the high 30s to low 40s range to say, okay, these are kicks that are probably the most common, the 44-yarder that you just got to make. So I don't think I'll soften it up on them, but I think we'll put them in range of, the long 30s to long 40s, that kind of 10-yard window that I think is fair to evaluate. Like, you got to make these kicks. And we actually have a pretty good breeze out here. I said, this is the Giants. This is Washington. This is Philly. This is going to be Tennessee, and this is going to be Green Bay. So we got to make outdoor kicks that are hard, with a little bit of element.
On Turpin, he's listed as 158 pounds. Do you find precedent in a player that light as returner that gives you confidence that he's not too small for what you might be asking of him?
Yeah, I coached in LA. I had JoJo Natson for a season and a half, for 2 seasons, and I thought he was fantastic. And then I think there's probably been a lot of proof of a lot of little guys that are really, really good. Eric Metcalf, I don't know his size. Dante Hall, maybe a little bit thicker, but Turp's probably a little bit quicker. So I think there's a lot of them. Tyreek, obviously, he's maybe a little bit thicker, but I think the little guys, I just know when we practice against the little guys and play against the little guys, they're really hard to see behind blockers, and then if you can never see him, it's really hard to get a clean shot on him. So for those little, quick, fast guys, you got to populate tackle them, and if you don't, then you don't ever really get clean shots. So I think it's a little bit overrated, the impact of a little guy taking big body blows, because they just don't seem to take those, and I'm excited to see what he does.
David Hellman, Fox Sports. You were with Greg for so long, and he's kicked so many NFL field goals. How does it change your approach as a coach when you have 2 guys that have done so much less in the NFL? Yeah, that's a good point. I kind of had reverted back to 2012 when Greg was a rookie, and I kind of said, what did we do when Greg was a rookie? Because when he was a rookie, we had competition for the first 2 or 3 years that he was with the Rams in St. Louis. And it kind of reverted back to those memories a little bit of a young Greg who was very talented, a little bit sporadic, probably like most rookies. And how do we tighten him up? A lot of it is the snap and the hold. A lot of it is film watching, hard critique, some competition, which is great that we have too. I don't know if I'm answering your question very good. But as you saw Greg ascend, there was a lot of things we did over the course of 10 years that I think helped that. Some back surgeries hurt him, but I'm hopeful that, some of these guys will make an ascension, where Jonathan's a young guy, so he hopefully has a decade plus in him, and, Lirim hasn't had many opportunities, so he's pretty fresh-legged, so I'm excited to see what Lirim can do. So yeah, that's kind of the experience that I've kind of reverted back to in my brain, is how to critique these guys and be strong, but also encourage them when the bad days come, because I told them before we started, I said, you guys are going to miss some kicks, and load it back up, and the next one, let's go. That's why I don't have them kick 8 in a row. It's 2 on, 2 off, 2 on, 2 off. They catch their breath, they make it, I'm back up. I miss it, catch my breath, I'm back up.
You mentioned a little bit about the operation for the kicker's success, and a big part of that. How have the snaps been so far? To the untrained eye, it seems some have been off a little bit, and I don't know if there's the same velocity. Is Jake working through some things at all? Or
Yeah, Jake's part of it too is the operation. There's little intricacies for each kicker, how they like it held and when their trigger is to go. So, I limit Jake's snapping a little bit in the OTAs and in the summertime and have him just train. So there's an acclimation for him just to tighten some things up, just like Brian too. Brian's punting has been good in the spring and summer, a little bit lower volume just because we expect to play for the next 7 months. So, and they're the only guys we have on the roster, so I don't ask too much of them in the summer. But there's some things for sure that they know they got to tighten up. If you want to know what it is, I said, Jake, one thing you got, and it's accuracy, and Brian, one thing you got to work on, and it's consistency. And so that was before camp even started. And so that's kind of proven that, Jake, keep working on that accuracy, especially on the field goals, hit it right here every time. On the punts, right on the right hip. And then Brian just working on that drop that, you get into such a good routine in the season, it's like just money, boom, boom, boom. Then you're coming off the summertime where you don't kick as much, and it's finding it again.
Huey Scruggs, NBC5 in Dallas-Fort Worth. How do you use the joint practices to judge your kickers and the preseason games?
Yeah, that's the most important, to be honest with you. So when we scrimmage Denver and the Chargers, we have field goal periods scripted, and those will be second to the games. We get into the games, that's the number one evaluation for me. When I was in Oakland with Janikowski, and then even sometimes with Zerline, they go through some things in practice and pregame warm-ups, and they're just kind of just tightening it up. And then I don't want to judge them necessarily on that as much as obviously, when it's a 47-yarder and there's 7 minutes left in the second quarter and we got to make this kick, does he make it? So I hope I answered your question. The game, absolutely number one eval criteria. The scrimmages are great opportunities. Even though there's not true pressure, it's just different for those guys seeing a line in front of them in a different color jersey, running at them in a corner coming across my face on my follow-throughs affected. So pretty excited. Yeah.
Christy Scales, Cowboys Radio. Each summer you're working with rookies who didn't play coverage or return in college. And now you've got, for example, a wide receiver who's now getting work as a gunner. Talking with Dennis Houston yesterday, he said he really didn't play teams at Western Illinois. How is he looking at some of these other guys that are getting exposed to this for the first time, but Houston in particular?
Yeah, Dennis has been really sharp. And me and Coach Stu, my new assistant, we talked about a lot of these guys and how is it going to translate to the game. So, we come out here with no pads. It's like, okay, let's get some drills. We come out here and practice with the pads, and it's like, yeah, that's pretty tight. But then when the live gun is shot and the tackle body's got to go down, it changes. So to answer your real question is every year we get the rookies, and it seems like none of them played special teams in college. And if they did, it was 3 years ago when they were a freshman because they all become the best players on their team. So it's honestly my funnest challenge in training camp is to take these guys who maybe don't know this is going to be their role, even though that's what it's going to be, and to make them really, really damn good at because that's what their role is going to be, and they really don't know how to do it. Damone Clark this morning, before the special teams meeting started, called me over and was kind of whispering like, Coach, you got to, teach me when I can get healthy how to play special teams because I've never done it. And I said, you just made my day, and it's only 7 o'clock in the morning. That's my pleasure. So part of my thing, too, is to make special teams attractive. Like, this is your role, and this is a great way to instill yourself in the National Football League. But this is pretty cool here, too, huh? You get to go against this guy, and you want to win, and you want to look good. So it's a fun challenge, and it is definitely a big one. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, you guys. Gals.
The following is a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about them Cowboys? Yeah! Go Cowboys!
This is Campin' Out, broadcasting live from Dallas Cowboys training camp on DallasCowboys.com and the official Dallas Cowboys app. And now your host, Shannon Gross.
Welcome to a special edition of Campin' Out. We were supposed to be off today, but you know what? When business calls, we show up. This is a very special show because normally it's just me and Shannon Gross and Nate Newton, but we are joined today by our good buddy Isaiah Stanbeck. How you doing, Isaiah?
Good, Isaiah Freakzilla.
And Patrick Walker. How you doing, Patrick?
Doing well. How's it going?
You've been on before. You've been on the show before.
AKA Okra.
Well, we are coming live to
King
you
Okra.
from Oxnard training camp because the Cowboys just signed a free agent player, a linebacker, somebody that his name came up quite a bit whenever the offseason was rolling around. Anthony Barr. Why now, guys? Why wait till we get to camp? Why not? I mean, why now? What happened?
They had a little bit of a reminder in terms of what their depth looked like after Jabril Cox missed practice yesterday. They said he had a little contusion or bumped knees or whatever it may be. But they had an opportunity to see what a padded practice looked like without their guy there, and they're like, well, let's not go into another year in the same situation that we're in currently. Let's go ahead and address this position.
And I agree 100% with Coach Edwards being here, man. That was just, he knows what he wants. He knows how to play the gaps. He's a veteran guy. As Patrick said earlier, he's got sticky hands, but he had 3 interceptions last year. So he knows how to get back in coverages and how to do things, and that may free up somebody else to rush that passer.
And there you go. And to that point, as Isaiah made, I think it's a situation where the Cowboys had long-time interest in Anthony Barr, but, the financials weren't necessarily there, but they came in. They saw some guys in pads. Jabril Cox missed because of a little bit of an injury. They rested him until Thursday, stepped back and said, hey, you know what, this little bit of a financial gap we have with Anthony Barr, call him and close that gap right now. Let's get him in training camp. So exciting addition for the Cowboys.
So what you're saying is they threw a little line of gunfire and kind of sparked it up. It ran up a little bit of space together.
And now it's lit.
Yeah.
And now it's lit.
Yeah.
Well, if you look at his stats over the last, I think he's been in the league 9 years, you're getting about a 60 tackle a year guy, 2 or 3 sacks a year. He's been in the league 9 years. What else are you getting out of Anthony Barr for the people that don't know?
Well, from my standpoint, you're getting versatility.
Absolutely.
He's absolutely a guy who can not only get after the passer if you need him to, but as we talked about, as Nate just mentioned, this is a guy who had 3 interceptions last season. He was approaching double digits in pass breakups. He can drop back in coverage very effectively. Combine his versatility with the versatility of Parsons, you get a healthy Jabril Cox back in the mix, who does very well at covering from the linebacker position. I mean, that's kind of a three-headed hydra. That's provocative, man. It gets the people going.
And more so, man. They've done the background. He's a leader.
Yeah.
He's going to be a veteran guy to calm guys down, to keep guys going in the right direction. And once he learns his defense, which I don't think it'll be hard because Coach George Edwards is a great communicator. Mm-hmm. Once they get this thing packed down through Quinn and everything, he's going to be one of those guys that when things get a little shaky, because, Shannon, this is what I worry about. This is what I worry about Isaiah and Patrick is when we play the big boys, when we play the 49ers and guys of that ilk that can bring that thunder up the middle running, this is a guy that's going to stand up and put his neck up in there, man.
And you know why he's able to do that? Because the boy is 6'5", 260 pounds.
Right.
He is a physical specimen.
He's a specimen.
He's somebody who is a tackling machine. Whenever I've seen him play, Minnesota's always had a solid defense underneath Zimmer for all those years, and this has been one of the guys that's been a foundational piece for those guys. So this guy's 6'5", 260, but he's a tackling guy. I think he played 11 games last year.
He played 11
77 tackles in those 11 games.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not getting past this guy at the second level. Not only that, you just touched on it in terms of his ability to lead. You're taking that responsibility off Micah. You're not forcing him to grow up as fast as he might have to, right? Van Der Esch, I don't think he's perceived as a leader. He's been around, but I don't think anybody perceives him as a leader, especially since they didn't really extend his contract, right? He's playing on a 1-year deal right now. So Micah Parsons is not – he's a second-year guy. Van Der Esch is playing for his life right now, and now you're able to put somebody who has had a C on their chest for as long as they can remember.
Yep. Right.
So is that what is that the main reason with depth, leadership ability, locker room guy? I mean, he's gotten a little banged up over the years, right?
Well, I think the durability is a fair question. But if you look at it, I think most of that is predicated upon him suffering a torn pectoral muscle in 2020. That cost him all but 2 games. But, again, like we spoke about, he came in last season for the Vikings, 11 games, 11 starts, over 70 tackles, 3 interceptions, almost 10 pass breakups. This is a guy that when he's on the field, he is making plays, and he's on the field more often than not because looking back over the totality of his career, he's never, with the exception of 2020, Anthony Barr has never played fewer than 75% of the games in the NFL. So you look at his trajectory now, 11 games last season. He's fully healthy now. There's no reason to believe he won't hit the ground running and remain on the field for the Cowboys.
Absolutely. And when people start talking about injuries, he's not having injuries reoccurring in the same position. He had the torn pec, and he had a little bit of a knee, right? So these are things that just happen with the flow of the game. But the physicality aspect and what Dan Quinn's been doing over this past over last year and obviously coming into this year and what he's trying to get these guys flying around, flying to the ball, hitting, making big turnovers, right? It's not always going to come in the aspect of interceptions, right? He's trying to get some doggone fumbles. And the only way you create fumbles is by running in there and blowing somebody up.
And let's put it in a basketball perspective. Steph Curry. The more shooters you put around him, the more guys that can play defense around him, that frees him up. And I look at Micah as ourselves. The more guys we can continue to put around him, that allows him to be a bigger and stronger weapon. And so late in games and late in the season, he won't tire out. And if he start calling defensive games, his mind won't shake. So this is every move they're making.
Strategic.
Yes.
And the thing is, as you start thinking about this defense at the second level, they've taken care of the interior defensive line, I think, as long as guys can remain healthy, right? We saw some of that yesterday with Hill in there, Big Ridgeway, right? You still got Gallimore. You still got some goons in it. Exactly. You got some goons that are in the middle.
Man. Yeah, I'm telling you.
So once you clog up the middle, what are your options as an offense, right? Start trying to combo block and start working the edges. Right. Well, now you work the edges one direction. Who you gonna run into? You got D-Law and you got Michael Parsons.
Right.
Right. Let me go over to the other side. Who we got over here? He's like, oh, okay. Well, you got big.
You got Durant Armstrong. You got Sam Williams.
Yep. You got those guys, and he's like, all right, if we combo block those guys, who are we gonna work up to? Anthony Barr.
Right. You have to pick your poison, and it's a problem, a great problem to have if you're a Cowboys team that has so frequently, particularly in the pre-Quinn years, not had that problem to deal with. It used to constantly be who's going to be that complimentary guy. You always had a guy for the most part like DeMarcus Lawrence when he's healthy, he's on the field, and then you insert Micah Parsons. Now in year 2 with Dan Quinn, you're starting to see the influence of not only Quinn but to George Edwards' credit as well, because he's unheralded in what he contributes to the team and his coaching ability. This is a defense that the defensive front, because the addition of Anthony Barr indirectly and both directly is going to impact positively the run defense for the Dallas Cowboys. So. It's going to help these young interior defensive linemen because the opposing team sees Anthony Barr staring at them over the crouched over young guys. So I think that Anthony Barr is going to make a massive impact not only at the linebacker level but indirectly this young interior defensive line. Now they get to free up a little bit more, play just football, not overthink, not try to overcompensate, not try to do more than their assignment is to do, because who's behind them? Micah Parsons, Jabril Cox, Anthony Barr, and then, okay, well, let's just try it in the air. Oh, well, you want to try it in the air? Trevon Diggs is right there waiting for you.
Think about the size, the change over the last year and a half, over the size of this defense now. The defensive line has gotten massive up front. Now you're going to the second level. Now you got Micah Parsons, 6'3", 245. You go over to Van Der Esch, he's 6'4", 255. You go over to Barr, he's 6'5", right, 255 plus, right? Then you go to the safeties. Oh, who's going to walk down in the box? Doggone Curse. And you know what I'm saying? So now you start thinking about the size of these guys. And then when you go back to the history of Dan Quinn, okay, we talk about it all the time. I've always said the reason why Dan Quinn was going to make such an impact, you start looking at some of the guys he brings in, Nashawn Wright, McQuamu, some of these longer limb guys, these guys start taking up lanes. So even if we're talking about the run defense, we start talking about the pass defense with these same guys, how much space are they taking up? Right. These guys want to throw the ball. Okay, now these guys have long, lanky arms. You talked about the 3 interceptions. You go back to one of Barr's most recent plays back in overtime last year. He tipped the doggone screenplay and got an interception. Right? Now all of a sudden you're closing those lanes, you're closing the gaps on the line, but you're also closing the passing lanes. This defense is going to be McNasty.
What about he's 30 years old. He's at a high impact position. How much do you have left in the tank? I'm gonna look at the two guys that played, not me or Patrick. But what do you got left in the tank at a high impact position like that at 30 years old?
We ain't looking for much during the preseason. If he starts, I mean, I'm not saying he's gonna come in and start, but he's an impact player, so he has a great chance to start.
That's a great question. Is he gonna start?
Yes.
Yes.
But he's a great impact player.
His contract's gonna say that.
Yes. But the thing that you have Jabril Cox. Luke Gifford is seen to be playing okay. They're gonna have a rotation, I think, where we don't have to just wear him out. And that's the perfect thing with Quinn. Quinn, and I don't know if we earlier today, before we got this big break, we listened to Coach Quinn, and he just specifically said over and over, I look at guys, I evaluate guys, I have guys in certain positions, so I can put them in the best position. Believe me, he gonna look at Barr. He gonna look at Barr. Him and Coach Edwards gonna get together and say, "What's the best package? Can we create a package, or do he fit well with the package we already have?"
This gives Dan Quinn so much freedom.
Yeah. Yes.
And just knowing Quinn personally,
freedom.
I mean, he can go to a 3-4 now if he wants to, right? Because Barr can stand up at the defensive end position. He can go to a traditional 4-3. He can go to a 4-2 for all he's concerned, right? And he can still stand this guy up on the end. Tight ends' abilities to get off the ball now are going to be slim. They're gonna be slim to none. If you want to go to Micah's side, good luck trying to run by him. He runs a 4-3.
Right.
Okay, if you want to go to Barr's side, you're just not getting off the line of scrimmage. Right. So the freedom that this gives Dan Quinn, this dude is in a candy shop now.
Absolutely. And then you mentioned, the ability to potentially shut down opposing tight ends. You referenced the guy who did that very well last year in J-Ron Kearse. Yep. And now you're talking about Dan Quinn brought him up in the most recent press conference here today, mentioning undrafted free agent Marquez Bell.
Yeah.
Bell, he said he's going to try to utilize Bell as both a safety and a linebacker. So now you have Kearse and you have the flexibility of Bell being added to someone like Barr, who's playing opposite Micah Parsons. You throw in Jabril Cox, and it just more and more you start to realize that this defense, again, might have to carry the Cowboys. All the Cowboys need is the offense to do enough. So if they do better than enough, that's all to the good. But if not,
you're also
then
adding Jabril Cox to the special teams equation now, taking some of that pressure off him on defense.
Very true.
Let me ask this question here, man.
You're not allowed to do that on the show. I'm the only one that can ask questions.
Yes, sir.
No,
well,
you're
let
wrong,
me make
Nate.
a
You
statement.
got me all the way over here off my hamburger.
Yes, sir.
And now you're going to start
let me
asking
make
questions?
a statement.
And could have had two hamburgers.
Let me make a
could have had two hamburgers.
Would you lace it with okra?
Oh, man.
They are
fried.
But see, we're forgetting about Dante Fowler.
I don't think we're forgetting about him. It's just that we're going down the list of notables. And,
Okay.
But you're right.
Yeah.
Fowler is a notable
Yes.
acquisition. Pre-existing relationship with Dan Quinn. I expect Fowler, as long as Fowler continues to prove himself in camp,
Yes.
I expect Fowler to have a critical role in the Cowboys' rotation as a defensive end, and in certain sets, maybe drop back in the linebacker capacity.
That defensive line is very congested.
Yeah.
The defensive line
I love it.
is
Good problem to
it's a
have.
great
I
problem
love
to
it,
have.
man.
Competition only breeds positive things.
Hey,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
You're good, bro.
I was
You getting ready to ask one of your patented
I was
questions?
just going to tell y'all what I like the most about this.
Okay.
Is exactly.
That ain't your job. You just ask
Well, you already broke the mold.
He set himself up.
Yeah.
He set himself up for that.
You broke the mold.
Okay. What do you have
Nate,
to say,
we used
sir?
to talk about this on our show all the time. The
Right.
People Show, Hanging
Yeah.
with the Boys, the show of the DallasCowboys.com conglomerate.
Yes.
You'll learn, Patrick. You'll learn. No, we the biggest clowns on the but every once in a while we have a good opinion.
Right.
It appears with the offseason moves that they made with some of the big name guys, the big contracts, guys that you thought were going to be here until their contracts ran out, and what they're doing now is the days of we pay you too much money, you're not going anywhere, you're just here. Like they are creating a competitive
atmosphere.
environment.
Yes.
Bringing these guys in. Did you say that?
Over a
Did you
year
say-
ago.
Did you?
Over
there
a
you
year
go.
ago.
Especially
That's what I like
defensively.
about this.
Especially
They're not
defensively.
sitting on their hands. They're like, hey, let's get better. Let's get better.
When Dan Quinn's name first came up, right? Because I experienced Dan Quinn when I was in Seattle. I had a complete understanding of what he was going to bring to this organization. And one of the key words, two words I brought up was culture and competitiveness. Those are two things that he lives by. you don't just get to show up and just walk on the field. You got to earn your keep. And I don't give a doggone if you've been around this organization doing great things. I'm still going to push you because competition is going to push you towards greatness or push you out the league. One of the two. Either way, I'm a benefit.
I love what Anthony Brown said in one of last week's press conferences about Dan Quinn. I asked him specifically what makes Dan Quinn such a player coach. And Anthony Brown, as blunt as ever, he said, number one, he knows how to talk to players, but number two, he doesn't take any blank. You have to get out there. You have to do your job because as much as Dan Quinn acclimates to his players and he can speak fluently with them, if you're not out there doing your job and you're missing assignments, he's going to let you know it. And he's building this competitive nature, this competitiveness across the board on the defensive side. So between he and George Edwards, there's just new blood that was absent. Not to throw shade at anybody, but you didn't necessarily feel this type of air on any side of the ball, particularly defensively during like the Rob Marinelli days. You certainly didn't see it under Mike Nolan. Dan Quinn comes in. He combines with the experience of George Edwards, who himself is a former defensive coordinator, right? We're talking about the pre-existing relationship with Anthony Barr. So for those that may not know or may have forgotten, George Edwards knows a little bit about football. Just a smidge.
25 years of it.
Just a smidge.
So, and Edwards was a front runner as far as candidate for defensive coordinator before they brought in Dan Quinn, but the Cowboys were able to have their cake and eat it too by having those two together. I think that tandem is manifesting itself in moves like Anthony Barr, in Dante Fowler, in making sure that the interior defensive line is upgraded. Like Isaiah said, there are a ton of, I'll put it this way, there are a ton of trees being thrown at that defensive line, and I think it's a fantastic
them little short stump.
They're going to have some difficult decisions.
We got Ridgeway, we got Gallimore, we got Bohannon.
Quentin Bohannon,
I mean, I just would like to just take them out to a local chicken joint, man, and just see if we get a boneyard started. You know what I'm saying?
The Cowboys are going to have some difficult decisions when it's time for final roster cut down.
And you love that.
Yes, absolutely.
And other teams love it, too. Other teams going to be sitting back like, who y'all letting go?
Waiting to pick whatever falls from the tree, hoping the Cowboys don't get them back on the practice squad if they qualify.
I'm going to bring this all the way back to my argument the other day, Nate.
Mm-hmm.
Does this signing make it harder for you to keep 7 wide receivers? Because now you got another guy in the mix, and you already got a crowded defensive line room. You got a crowded linebacker room. Is that going to affect anything that you do?
You're not going to have 7 wide receivers.
No.
No.
How many will have, Z?
6.
6.
There'll be 6.
I agree with that.
It's going to be it's going to get tough.
We got to get a little more of that gunpowder and line it up.
I agree with Ozzy. I think it'll be 6, but in those 6, you're talking about the guys. I mean, we already know CeeDee Lamb is going to be tasked with moving around a ton. But absent Michael Gallup and absent James Washington, these other guys, you talk about Dennis Houston, whom I keep pointing out, he's doing great things, right? You talk about Kevontae Turpin. We just heard Kellen Moore, Bones Fassel, but also
pretty much just put a stamp of approval.
Right, Bones just put a stamp of approval on the special teams front. But what we're seeing out here in practice is Turpin is starting to get more involved on the offensive side of the ball. I say all of that to say whatever 6, because I believe it'll be 6, whatever 6 make it, minus 1 because CeeDee Lamb's going to do his thing, those others are going to be asked to be as versatile as possible to keep from having to run that +1 in the wide receiver room. So I think 7 will be heavy, especially with the addition of Barr. You got to run heavy at linebacker now.
A lot of people look right past what Bones Fassel said today in terms of Turpin, right? His outlook on him, pretty much saying that he's our return guy. Right. He pretty much
been
said
looking
that
at
today.
him for years.
He pretty much just put a stamp on it and said he's our return guy this year.
Yes,
I don't think anybody really picked up on that.
You made me pick up on it because I was about to sleep. What, did you hear that?
Turpin.
I'm like, wow, man, what happened?
So many words. That's exactly what he said.
Idaho
He's our return guy. We're not going to have access to CD this year. He's our guy. So being that, what you're seeing with him and getting forced into the receiver role now, you're going to play some doggone receiver.
Yeah, you are.
Because we're not keeping the days of Dante Halls and all that. That's all gone. You're not just on a roster as a return man anymore, okay? It's just not happening. Right. So he's going to be given every opportunity to prove himself at the receiver position because he's already a lock at the return.
Right, which keeps them from having to run heavy at receivers. So absolutely.
All right, fellas, thumbs up or thumbs down?
Double thumbs up.
Science approves.
Nate,
I'm with you, man. I'm rolling.
Everybody, are we excited about this?
I'm super excited.
Yeah. This is an exciting. This is a splashy and justifiably so when it comes to being excited about this. Now, obviously, some are going to say, "Oh, well, you're hyping the guy." Go look at the film. Go look at his resume.
So physical.
This is arguably, and just off the top of my head, you love the addition of Fowler, but as far as 2022 free agency is concerned, this is the splash signing for the Dallas
We're not
Cowboys.
asking him to play 100% of the plays.
You're not.
When Minnesota, he
You're
had
not.
to play basically the 100% of the play because he was that
The
versatile.
linebacker room is still Micah's. It's still Micah's linebacker room.
Him and Kendricks in Minnesota were dangerous.
Yes. And they never came off the field.
Those two were completely dangerous. And as an offensive line, you did not want to have to work up to those guys on the second level. Now, teams are going to have to deal with the Dallas Cowboys and this second level that they're going to present.
Wow,
the physicality that he's going to bring to this defense that was already becoming more physical is dangerous.
We're talking about a Cowboys team that can potentially throw waves of defensive players at you on any given down. If you don't get excited for that, check your pulse.
It's been a while since you had that.
It's been
on,
a while.
on both levels.
Yes.
Defensive
Check your
line
pulse.
and linebacker. So, well, there you go. Big thumbs up from everybody on the show. It's if you're not excited, get excited because Isaiah, Nate, and Patrick said you should be excited. This is going to bring a new dimension to this defense. So, you know what? The defense was already. It was
nice.
It's amazing.
The offensive line after yesterday is like, dang.
It's amazing.
It's going to get worse.
It's amazing. 2 years ago, we had
man,
a historically bad, the worst team in Cowboys history on paper 2 years ago. And then we just said all we need is, be middle of the road, 15, 16, 17, and you got a shot. And they got there. Now you're bringing guys in, and I think you're better now than you were last year. You were wondering in the offseason, were you better? Now I think you're better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Offense steps it up a little bit. We may be in for a long, extended season past round one.
Kudos to the entire scouting department.
Yes.
Kudos to everybody that's responsible for making decisions like this. The one question mark that you had about this defense was there two things: ability, their big plays that they were giving up,
right,
and their run defense. Well, they just checked the box on one of those.
And we didn't even touch on how much improved the safety unit is, right? You're talking about another year for Malik Hooker under Dan Quinn. You're talking about Donovan Wilson is now completely healthy, and the list goes on. So top to bottom, this Cowboys defense looks like it's going to be quite the problem.
There you go. Well, fellas, thank you for joining us.
Sure.
Isaiah,
absolutely.
Patrick, Nate, I'll deal with you after the show. Man.
Hey, man, I just want to thank American Airlines, man. I really do.
Yes.
Yeah, I got my wife home safe, man. I love you,
American
baby.
Airlines for bringing this special edition of Camping Out.
I got one question. I'm sorry, I got one question.
No, go ahead.
Is Shannon's Hamburger sponsored?
No, I want one question. So, are you really the Tour de France with that shirt on?
Oh, my Lord.
Send the show off. Send the show off.
We'll be back tomorrow. You never know who will be on the show, so tune in tomorrow at our normal time, our normal place. This has been a special edition of Camping Out. Chris, thanks for keeping us on the air.
Thank you, Beamer.
Willie, thanks for keeping the live stream up.
Yes, sir. Willie.
We'll be back tomorrow on Camping Out. Thanks, American Airlines. Bye-bye.
This has been a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.